Okay, so I'm gonna take you through these steps like what I do for my workshops, except the idea that we're doing here is that instead of learning tunes, I am giving you what I feel is important as a teacher to work on for practice skills. You have no idea how many years I sat on the other side where you are right now and would raise my hand, and my question was this: how do I get better? I could play tunes, I could learn tunes, I had no issue doing any of that, but what I didn't know how to do was actually become a better fiddler. And so we've been thinking a lot about this series, and some of you know that I'm in the middle of writing a book about how I have put all of this together over the years, and so this kind of came about from all of that. So these series you're guaranteed for $60 a month, you are going to be playing for 4 hours, and it's the same kind of stuff that I'm doing when I woodshed. So that's what this is about. We're hoping that it is very much affordable to where you'll keep coming and hanging with us, because I don't know, woodshedding with people is a lot more fun than it is woodshedding by yourself, I think. And at least none of us can hear each other if it is bad. So I hope by the end of these 4 hours that it's not bad, and that you have found some enjoyment with practicing, because that's where I think this has to come from. You have to really enjoy doing what you're doing so that you can get better skills. So.
And just if it was not already clear, this is very much Trisha's workshop. We've worked together teaching workshops for many years, but we just thought it would be a nice change for people to have this approach to fiddling. And so I'm kind of here with you guys learning this stuff. Obviously, I've sat with her through all those workshops where I was teaching tunes, and then she would teach some of this stuff, and I would just kind of space out for a little while. And so in doing this series with her, I've kind of, it's been a nice challenge, and definitely I can feel that it's helping me, because I'm using a lot of these things that she's going to show you when we play around the house. And I think, oh, I learned that in the workshop last week. And kind of, I never did that before. Like I said, I was always just in my own world.
Okay, so if you don't have pen and paper, you might want to get some, so I'll give you a moment to do that. If you just want to absorb what this is, please know that not only will you get a video, but you will also get my own personal notes, which I will copy and paste and put into a Google document so that you can go back and look and see what I would tell you as a teacher that you should focus on. But I always feel like it's good as a student to write down so that you have kind of the memory of what we're grasping, and for me as a student, I do better when I write it down and then go back and look at it. So the idea of my notes are to help you fill in the gaps in case I go too quickly over something and you don't get it. I don't plan on going quickly. The idea here is for you to know what to do, even though you may not be able to execute it, but hopefully throughout the week you then have something that you can go back and practice on, and then your job is to do the woodshedding to execute it. So that's what we're doing here. So here's what we're going to do. Tuning. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about this, but I feel that instructors don't spend enough time talking about it. I also feel that what's happened over the past 20, 30 years is that we all went out and spent our $20 to get a snark, and then decided that the snark was better than our ears, so we just relied on something turning green to tell us that we were in tune, and then we would go sit with a whole bunch of people that had another device that turned green that might have been a little bit different, saying that they were in tune, and then we all just say, hey, but I'm in tune. I don't really know why we don't sound good together, but I'm in tune. So I'm not anti-electric tuners, I'm just pro start working on your ears. So I'm going to show you how to do that.
Tuners definitely have their place, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, definitely. So a little bit of brief history, what I'm telling you today. For roughly 30 years of my own playing, I was like you, I relied on an electronic tuner, so I couldn't do what I'm going to show you today. I had to practice it just like I practice my tunes. And here's what happened. I was a luthier, and my job was to take instruments apart and then kind of do some work with them and then put them back together so that students can play them well. And it dawned on me that I could be working on other skills while I was doing this. So this is what I did. Let's see if I can do it today. I'm a little off today, but not bad. Enough where I'm not going to be embarrassed that that is my A. But that would be the first thing I did. If you're going to rely on a tuner, if you're going to rely on one of the forks, which I like a lot because when you hit them, they ring for a while. And you can actually pluck with a fork and hear the end sound to see if they match. So the fork is kind of my favorite. But of course, the electronic tuner is good when you're jamming or you're in a loud noise.
Wait. What do you mean by the end sound?
So when you hit the thing on your bridge and it gives you the point of A, but then it trails off and you can hear your note trailing at the very end as well as the end of a fork. And Howard, I guess, wants to see what this is like. So here's how a fork works. You just bang these and then you put them here. And then you can kind of hear that a little bit better. And I'm actually a little bit sharp, so maybe my ear was better than my fiddle. So I'm just kind of listening, and I like that much better.
Was that right? Sorry.
Yes, it was right.
Okay. All right.
Sorry. I like this better, but this is our start point, and I don't want to spend all day. We won't do this in all of the other sessions. This is just my point of telling you why tuning is important. And here's why. The instrument is tuned in perfect fifths. And I know that this is a no-brainer, but believe me, it really was only like 3 years ago that it dawned on me why that was so important, because I would hear people say, oh, it's a perfect fifth. And I was like, yeah, it's a perfect fifth. Until I was teaching about chord shapes and someone asked me about what they were saying was, are you serious that you can have a chord that doesn't contain the root note? And then I was having this moment of like, well, of course you can have a chord. And if this is over your head right now, don't fret. But my point is that a perfect fifth means that it has to be perfect, or the instrument does not pat you on the back when you're in tune. What that means is if you're a little bit out of tune, meaning you have a good A, E, and maybe G, that means every time you play on the D string and every time you play on a string next to the D string, you will be searching for the note. You will be taking your left hand and readjusting every time you place your fingers down. Now you can just imagine from muscle memory why that is not good, because that means that you are not really woodshedding that finger placement and the placement between the notes. You're just trying to fix your problem the whole time you're playing.
So you're saying basically, even if it's microscopically just a little bit out of tune, it's kind of pulling your focus and your energy away from what you're playing, and instead you're focusing on compensating, even if it's just a little bit. Just
a little bit. And all of you who have played with other people, you know what I'm talking about, because you've played with somebody, you're not in tune, and the whole time the two of you don't know who's out of tune, so it's kind of like you both play bad because you're compensating your notes to try to make them sound good. Who's experienced that?
I know I have.
Okay, so that's what you're trying to avoid here. And that means you're trying to avoid it with yourself right now. This isn't even talking about playing with other people. So here we go, so that I don't spend the whole hour on tuning, which I could, but I'm not going to. Here's what I suggest. Get your electronic tuner. Make sure you have a good A. When you feel like you have a good A and it's green for you, then the next thing is to put the tuner away. And I'm happy with my A, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play my A and E together, and I am going to listen for my perfect fifth. Here's what I'm not going to do, so pay attention. I'm not going to do this. Even though I know it's like really out right now, even though that seems like that's an okay way to tune.
It's certainly the way I hear a lot of, it's the way I used to tune.
Yes, and I used to have to tell Howard not to do it. But from here on today, what I want you to do is wherever you have your hand grip on the bow, I want you to start getting as close to the hand grip as you can, and you are going to pull the bow as slow and as evenly as you can until the tip, and then you're going to change directions. And you are going to go slowly doing this, playing your A and E. You can go ahead and try. I'll show you what I'm doing as well. As I pull and listen, I am going to tune. I only have, don't have fine tuners anymore, and I can't do this with you, so can you give me a moment to go first? All right.
I really just want to make sure my A is good, but I'll let you do first.
There we go. You can hear my E is sharp, so I'm going to try to drop it in. And listen. And I'm going to go a little bit flatter to make sure that I'm not overcompensating, which I would have. I'm going to go flat enough to where it sounds bad again. And now I'm going to tune it. And I'm very happy with my A and E now. And since I have decided that I'm going to go with the A, that means I'm going to leave the E alone and I'm going to go do the A and D. Even if you feel like you're perfectly in tune right now, this is a good time to start practicing the very low, long bow pull. And it's great for you to hear your two strings together and make sure you can do them evenly. So here's my A and D. They should be out as well. And my D is sharp, so I'm already going to drop it. That was a lot, so now I can pop up. And there's my nice even bow pull, getting those two in tune, making sure I feel good. And now I'm going to hope that the D was where I wanted it to be, and I will do the D and G now. And I feel pretty good about mine. I'm gonna let Howard tune. Sounds good, sorry.
What was I going to say about that? I could see how, somebody who could even, be a fairly advanced player would maybe come to this workshop and say, well, I've been tuning for years. Why are you wasting my time with this? Because I just have found that even though everybody thinks they're really good with their tuning, like we all feel like we're good with our rhythm, you don't really know until you play with the metronome or till you've really studied your tuning. That's the only way that you're going to know. I think one of the things that you mentioned very briefly in this beautiful monologue was to practice tuning like you practice your tunes.
Yeah.
We sit around, we practice tunes so that we can get with folks or just play by ourselves, whatever we want to do with our tunes. But that is certainly a concept that I wasn't so familiar with, which is to practice tuning, just like you would any other musical exercise.
Okay, someone has said, "What am I listening for?" That's good that you asked. Let me tell just two things
All
before I
sounds good
forget.
to me.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So first of all, I do want to say the reason why I don't want you to do the quick bow thing. Everybody hear what happens to my end notes when I bow like that? When you bow like that and you're changing directions, every time you change directions, you actually push the note down, and so you're pulling it sharp, which means that your ear is constantly listening to a note be in tune, out of tune, in tune, out of tune.
I can almost visually see a dip.
You can see a dip. So the first thing, even if your skill level of pulling the bow slowly right now is really difficult, don't overlook that skill. That is something you want to master. You want to be able to pull the bow as slowly as you can from one end to the other and change direction. As soon as you can do that and get both of those notes to lock in, and Olga, this is what I want to say. When they are not in and the two strings are being bowed evenly, and let's say they're really close, it's almost better when it's really close than it is out of tune. When it's really close, you hear the sound waves, they kind of mesh with each other and they carry. If they're a little bit out, what happens is you get this lovely, lovely wave. And it's
not lovely.
No, it's not lovely at all. It sounds horrid. And so you kind of want to move in and out. If you're not sure where that lock is, then make sure you do go sharp enough to know that you're out of tune. And what you're doing is pulling everything in to each day, you might get closer and closer. And that's the last piece here. If you're still not sure, the thing you should do now is put your tuner back on and see how you did. If you still have a good A and most of your other strings are good, you might already have a good ear that you can rely on. But you don't really know that until you go back and check yourself. So I'll give you a moment here and you can check yourself. Like I said, this is not something I expect you to perfect today, just me telling you. Some days I can hear well, some days I can't. Some days my ear is fatigued. You never know what you're going to get. But my point is that you don't get better unless you practice it. And we are going to be listening for not just perfect fifths in the series, but we're going to be listening for perfect thirds. We're going to be listening for perfect third and fifths. We're trying to get in tune to what the 1, 3, and 5 sounds like. That's where we're going with all of this.
Tricia, how do you feel about fine tuners in general? Do you try to avoid them?
No, not at all. I think fine tuners are
fine.
Fine, yeah, they are necessary. I had them for years, but I moved to the precision. Well, it's not the precision peg. It's actually Chuck Heron's peg head, and I can dial in every bit as good as the fine tuners. And I was never good since I'm not classically trained. I had a really hard time tuning like this. It was just difficult. But I can really lock in with the peg heads. And I'm never disappointed that I did that. And I've had them now for almost 20 years, so 15, 20 years. So
my pegs are so sticky, if I needed to use the actual pegs, I'd have to figure something out.
Yeah. Tuning's not everybody. It's not important to everybody. I'm hoping at some point, though, it will be. Because my favorite thing to do is play with somebody who is so careful about their tuning so that I can blend with them. And what you're going to find out is that if you overlook your tuning skill, it is so difficult to blend with another fiddler. And that's one of my favorite things to do. And that may mean that the other fiddler has to know how to blend with me. Sometimes you think you're in tune, you can't help it. You're suddenly out of tune. Well, then you have to know how to compensate for an out of tune tune.
I just stopped playing.
You stop. Well, sometimes we can't. So
right, sometimes we can't.
You're in the middle of something and you just can't. Okay.
I want to go back to one thing, just Olga's point about asking what
you're listening for.
What she's listening for, and making this visual again. We're talking about sound waves, and when it's out of tune, those waves clash. And you can actually hear it. And when it's in tune, those waves, again, the perfect fifth, or whatever it is, they blend just perfectly. And otherwise they're clashing, and it's the best way I can describe it is that you're hearing these waves clash, and then suddenly they lock in, and it's kind of like a release or something. And it can be subtle and hard to hear, especially from my ears on the high strings. Those fine waves are harder for me to hear.
And as I said before, I'm not telling you never use a tuner again, an electronic tuner. Just practice using your ear. That's the nutshell here.
And electronic tuners are great on stage performances. They save a lot of stress.
So here's why it's important. And this was, like I said, the one where I was just like, how could I have not thought about this? This is the no-brainer. It's perfect, because if that G and D string are not perfectly in tune, then you do not have a perfect home spot for the key of G. G and D together make a nice, easy, simple G chord. That is your home register for the key of G. What I'm talking about right now is that I don't look at the fiddle as 4 individual strings at all. To me, the fiddle is 3 registers. There's a low, which is our G home bass. There's a medium middle register that is our D home bass. And then there's the high register that is our A home bass. And yes, G and D together, if they're perfect, best G chord you can go to and anchor all of your G notes to. G tune is in tune, you should be able to get all of your G shapes in tune. D and A in tune for the key of D, you now have the perfect place to get all of your D chords in tune. A and E is perfectly in tune, you now have a perfect home spot for the key of A. So this is why having those tunes, those strings in tune with each other is so important. Those are your home keys for G, D, and A, home registers. So I'm just letting that sink in again. That's why also you want to be able to bow your G home spot nice and even, and listen for that perfect blended note. When they're nice in tune, you shouldn't be able to tell the difference between the G and D note. And I didn't play mine well. Nice long slow bow pulls. That was my home bass for G. Now my home bass for D. Nice and slow. Have a listen. Hopefully you're making that sound so blended and like butter. You don't have this wobbly thing or a little bit of gritchiness. So the bowing skill that goes along with this, it's equally important. I promise you your ear will get better when your bowing gets better, but you got to be able to voice those 2 notes together. Same with the A and E, it's a completely different bow angle. You want to practice hearing that and bowing it. Just something for you to go after. Like I said, if you're really wanting to get better at this, really try to work on getting slow at being able to pull that and pull it in tune. All right, 3 registers, G, D, and A. And here's what you need to know. Your ring finger is boss of the whole instrument. It can help you drone. It can help you navigate across the fingerboard. It can help you even ensure that you aren't cheating by playing out of tune. And here's why it's boss. Ring finger is always the octave of the string below it. So that means, without thinking here, you have a G home bass. Get mine in tune. You have a D home bass. And you now have an A home bass. So the first thing that we'll do together is let's find our octave. Here's a good tip. If your octave sounds like this, you hear that wave? You like it? No, get that wave in tune. And hold that note and hold that hand position. So find your G home place. You can find yours. Here's one thing I like to do to work on hand position, and I have my students do this when we're warming up, is when you feel like you know exactly where that G note is, practice moving that G finger back and listening what happens if it becomes flat or if it does become flat. Because if it's not flat and you thought you were in tune, that means there's a sweeter spot. Also practice moving that ring finger forward to see if you have a tendency to allow flat notes to sound like they're in tune. And the only reason why I mention that is because that is my problem. I will allow a flat note to be in tune. And then when I go back and listen to it, every time I hear it, I feel myself just wanting to push that note in tune just a little bit. We all have little hang-ups. Find out what yours is. So play your G drone again. Make it flat. There's my wave. Get it back in tune.
That looks to me like you're just rolling your finger a little bit rather than scooting it
I'm not
up
scooting.
and down.
I'm definitely rolling the position. And now roll it forward.
So that it's almost like, again, a microscopic intonation change.
Yeah, it's amazing how just the ability of moving the placement of the string on your finger will change a note from being in tune to out of tune without even scooting or moving. It all could even just be the angle of whether the finger is tall, whether it's flat. I don't know how you all bow right now or how your intonation is, but those are the things that you want to make sure that you start knowing about yourself. Are your fingers tall? Are they flat? Are you always getting the things in tune? Do you fight with intonation, and why? So just remember what you're going for here. All right, so I told you have a G home base. If you go right next door, let's try out our D home base. So find that D drone and have a listen. Remember, nice, slow bow pulls. Even if you're bad at it right now, practice. Because if you aren't practicing that and you are doing it fast, that means you are bending the note. That means you don't know if you are really in tune. Nice and slow. Same thing again. Roll it flat, roll it sharp. You can do this at home. You saw me do it. You're just trying to understand how your finger notes and if it's strong. Believe me, the ability to roll that even in hand position is just good for your overall strength and your dexterity. The reason why I know this is because I've tried to play left-handed and I suck, and it's because I do not have that muscle strength yet, even though I know what I should be able to do. All right, A home place. You ready? You should know where it is. Go find it. Really listen for your blend. Go nice and slow. Good. All right, if we were all advanced and had 5-string violins, the string we would have that falls on the other side of the G is a C string. So just for memorization purposes now, you need to memorize that your third finger on the G string is an actual C note, and that finger becomes home for the key of C. If you're not sure how to get there, do part of your G scale. And that note there should be a good C. You don't have anything to check it with at the moment, but just try to find it together. So think to yourself, you have a G home base, a C home base, a D home base, and an A home base. And you know what's so great about old time fiddle tunes is that if you're here today, those are the only 4 home bases that you really need to know in order to like sit down with people and play fiddle tunes. And if you can already do the other fancy keys like B flat and B and F and everything, you probably don't need to be here today. But just to let you know now,
I don't know if that's true. I mean, I can play in B flat and F. I mean, I think, yeah, I don't know if I agree with that.
Okay, well, you don't have to. Okay, you ready now? Here we go with the cheats. You know now what ring finger does and how it runs everything on the fingerboard. This is important. This is your money's worth right here. This will get you along in all of your fiddling days, probably forever. I've been fiddling now for 45 years now and have used this and not moved past it yet. You ready? 3 cheats. These are the chord shapes that you need to know. First one is the 2-3. And when I say 2-3, middle finger and ring finger, they go together. We're going to be looking at these cheats like we're reading a book from left to right. So that means if you're playing a 2-3 shape, you would play a 2 on the G string and a 3 on the D string. That's a 2-3 shape. Next shape is the 3-1 shape. Ring finger. You got a ring finger laid down. You can play the index finger to the right of that ring finger all the time, just like you can with the 2-3 shape. It's a 3-1 shape. So that's shape number 2. The last shape is the 1-2 shape. You're playing an index finger. You have the ability to play the middle finger, and the middle finger can actually be in the low position here, which low I call the natural position. In this case, I'm playing a G natural. Or you can play a 1-2 shape in the sharp position, and you can play this index finger with the G sharp. Now you have to know which key you're in, and I'm going to kind of show you this in a little bit. But let's go back to the 3 shapes again. 2, 3.
Before you move on,
What?
You're starting with numbers, and
Yes.
you know I was not so good in math when I was,
Right.
but your numbers are fingers.
Index finger is 1, middle finger is 2, and ring finger is 3. So it's easier for me to say a 2-3 shape as opposed to middle ring.
Okay.
But
all right, just clarifying that you're not talking about notes or anything.
no notes yet or anything like
just
that.
Fingers.
Just
okay.
fingers. Based on these 3 cheats, you can play all of your chords for the key of G, A, D, and almost C. How exciting is that? Are you ready? Come on, I expect a little more excitement. Yay!
It's hard to gauge excitement when everyone's muted.
Well, I know, and they're kind of writing down. Okay, here's how it works. Remember, just 3 cheats right now. That's all you need to know. And you still need to know your ring finger being boss. So here's how it works. Place your ring finger, let's just do it on the G because I gave you the cheats already for the key of G. Find your octave. If the octave is in tune, you can lay the 2-3 shape right next to it. So that means a 2 on the G and a 3 on the D. You want it to sound good. Remember, these shapes are just chord shapes. So that means that this little note here that is a B has to be a B. It can't be like a partial B, like a B flat. It has to be a B plus the G note. And there's that 2-3 shape. Now check our ring finger again. We want to make sure it's in tune. If we have a ring finger, as I told you before, you can play the index to the right of that now, and there's that 3-1 G shape. And you want that in tune, which is another B note. Once you have an index finger laid down, you can now place the 1-2 shape, and here's where you need to know that you need the G note and not the G sharp. So in order for it to still be a G chord, you have to have the B note and the G note. And that's what it sounds like. So if you were going to write down a number pattern for the key of G, I would write in my notes that G equals 2, 3, 1, 2.
And those are fingers again.
Fingers again. Some of you may know what those notes are already, and I applaud you. I don't half the time. I don't ever think about the notes. I only think about the shapes. If I'm playing a 2 down here on the G string, I know right immediately that that third finger next to it is a home safe place. I also know that it's a drone. So if I'm not sure that I'm in tune, I can always pick up that G note to recheck my tuning. It should be right there. I also know that if I am playing a third, I can go right next to it and play a 1. And that is a movement that is good. Please remind again, first number is to the left of the second number. When you say a 2-3 shape, 2 is to the left, 3 is to the right. And when you say a 3-1 shape, 3 is to the left, like this, and 1 is to the right. And when you say a 1-2 shape, 1 is to the left, and 2 is to the right. So just so that we are okay with this, let's just stay on the G and D string for a second and play a 2 on the G and a 3 on the D. There's that 2-3 shape. If you're not sure that's in tune, pick up that open G and now lay the 2-3 shape. Now, if you play a 3 on the G and a 1 on the D, this is a 3-1 shape now. And let's do the last one. Let's do a 1 on the D, or 1 on the G, sorry. And let's do a 2 high, and that is a 1-2 shape. And then we'll go back to the 2-3.
A 2 high, what do you mean?
But have you
talked about that yet?
I just mentioned that. We talked about a 2 being in the high position, which could be in a sharp position, or it can be in a natural position. I'm going to let this sink in again. So 2-3. A 3-1, same place. A 1-2 in the same place, but the 2 has to be high. Back to the 2-3. Okay, I'm going to walk you through this. We're not going to go across the fingerboard right now because I'm not sure that everybody's there with the shapes. So I don't know if this sounds good to all of you because I'm hoping your intonation sounds good, but this should sound like something already. It should sound good. Here's what mine sounds like. So the 2-3 shape. To the 3-1, to the 1-2, back to the 2-3. And the reason why this sounds good is because the 2-3 is your G chord. I know that because of my ring finger. When I play the 3-1, this is now the C chord. And when I play the 1-2, this is now my D chord. And then back to the 2-3. And the reason why this sounds good, this is going a little bit further than what I want to, but for some of you who've played music for years, it sounds good because it's a normal chord progression. This is a traditional folk chord progression that is composed of Roman numeral, not 1 or anything, but Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 4, and Roman numeral 5. And I'm saying it like that because I don't want the numbers to then confuse you about other things. So this is the big chord progression.
We're not talking about fingers.
No, no fingers. We're talking about what the guitar player has to know. This is why they have to know what key you're in. This is why banjo players have to know what key you're in. And honestly, this is why fiddlers should know what key they're in. Because see, fiddle tunes are all based around the traditional 1-4-5 chord progression. And if you know what register your fiddle tune falls in, like if it's in the middle G, you know that your tune notes, the notes that you're looking for, are going to fall out of a 3-1 shape in the middle register. And there's that 3-1 shape.
What you're saying to us is that if you're playing a G tune and it sounds like it's in the middle of the instrument or something like that, then it's going to be somewhere in this 3-1, using fingers, 3-1 shape.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then as it moves into the other chords, one would assume
Mm-hmm.
that those other chord shapes that you've shown us, for example, well, you haven't shown all those, but
No, I haven't.
but then those notes of the tune are going to be in those chord shapes.
Yes,
for the most
yes.
part.
This is we're not doing the theory like I wanted to do. This was to try to help to make sure that everyone's with me when I say 2-3 shape of how you need to look at it on the fingerboard. So remember, it's all from left to right. We're going to get into more theory later. I want to take you back to, remember where that number that I told you, this is not the Roman numeral number, but when I told you that G equals 2, 3, 1, 2, do you see that now? G equals your 2-3 shape to the 3-1 shape to the 1-2 shape. Everybody with me on that? All right, based upon the cheats I just taught you, that means you can find the rest of your chord shapes for other keys. And here's how you do it. Let's just move next door to that D note. Remember that D note, the octave? If you have a ring finger, that means to the left of that ring finger, you have a 2-3 cheat, right? To the left of that 2, you have a 1-2 shape. Harder chord to get, but it's there.
Wait, which one? This one?
No.
Oh.
Build your shape. Octave, 2-3, now 1-2.
Oh, okay. That D chord extends down to that F sharp.
It's hard. And what's so lovely about this, now that we got this 2-3 planted in the middle, what you'll see, what happens in the key of D is that your index finger flops back and forth. Because see, there's that 3-1 shape. So that means when I think of D, like I said, I don't think of what composes a D chord. I think that D to me is 1, 2, 3, 1. And that is D movement. I'm going to show you how to get these in tune, so it's going to be lovely. Just hang with me here. So you guys got it? D, start with the ring finger that you know. You can build the 2-3 shape, so leave the ring finger planted, especially if you get it in tune. Once it's there, leave it there and play the 2-3 shape. Keep it all there if you can. It's good for your hand. Now come down and hit this 1-2 shape. And now that you can pretty much rely that the ring finger didn't move, that means you can build the 3-1 shape off of the ring finger that you've kept there. So let me show you how I do this. I'm going to bow nice and slow. I'm actually going to do a down bow and an up bow, and you can do this with me. I'm going to find the octave D. I'm so proud of myself that now I can rely on that ring finger. So that means if it sounds like this, that means the finger I need to fix is not the ring, but it's the middle finger. So I'm going to scoot it and make it sound good. If that still sounds good, that means when you go find the index finger on the G string, that if that chord sounds horrible, it is not the middle finger that you move. It is the index finger. And for practice, I keep all of mine down just because I've done this for many years. If you're having some hand cramping right now, then you might need to look at your left hand position. But just so that you know, voicing 3 notes at the same time is the premise of what Cajun fiddlers use when they're courting people. So it is a thing. Get your hand strong enough to hit the 3 chord shape, because you can make it sound like this. Now, I'm not saying I can do that all day, but my point is that you want your hand strong enough. I still got my 2-3 shape. I hope you do too, because I want to get that index finger to sound good with the ring finger. And here's my big 3-1. I can come over and tap that D, and if I'm in tune, my fiddle gives me this lovely ring that just feels so good, and it kind of pats me on the back because it's saying, good job for getting in tune. All right, how are you doing? Pretty cool about the cheats, yes? Yes. See, I'm telling you, the first lesson is worth the $60. The rest of it will just be icing, I hope, but I hope I don't like make everybody disappear. So each of these is a D chord, yes. Just like the 2-3, the 3-1, and the 1-2 that we did for G, all of those are G chords. The beautiful thing about the fiddle is that you do not need the 1, 3, and 5 of the scale to be present in order to voice the chord. And here's what's really interesting is that when I'm in the key of G, let's just say that, I could have a combination of a B note and a G note that would sound like G, which is this. I have the combination of a B note and a D note. I have a combination of, let's see, what haven't I done?
Well, you got a G and a D, the open.
Yeah, the open. But here's what's crazy is that even just an octave D can sometimes be a G chord. Now, I'm not going to try to confuse you on this, but the point is all 3 of those notes, you could, and even a B note could be a G chord.
The 1, 3, and the 5 of
any combination
the
of the 1, 3, and 5 can sometime represent, and I'll show you what that sounds like in just a second. So I think
some of that stuff can get overwhelming with all the numbers.
Yeah, I don't want to right now.
Eventually, even if you do feel overwhelmed by it right now, it will make sense as you. So just sort of my advice is just let it sort of wash over you, and it'll stick at some point if it's not sticking now.
All right, so we built chords for G, we built chords for D. I'm going to show you how to use my cheats, how you can build them now for A. Let's find our A octave. So if I'm telling you, if you can believe what I say, that means that you should be able to build a 2-3 shape. If you have a 2 laid down, you should be able to play the index finger. And if you have a 1 laid down, you have a 3-1 shape. And what you need to know for the key of A is that that 3 is a big reach and not a little reach. So a little reach would be the note of C. So that's the difference between a C chord and an A chord. The C has to be a C sharp, so there's that 3-1 shape. So when I write down the key of A, what I normally say is that A is a 3 with like a little notation on it, like a little asterisk, that little thing, to tell me that it's in the sharp. And then I have 1, and then I have 2, and then I have 3 again. And the 3 is in the common position. So what I'm recognizing is like which one of these notes does not fall on like the taped fingerboard when we all get Suzuki tape, and that C sharp does not fall on there, right? A C, yes, tape fingerboard, you got a C note, not a C sharp. A is harder. Now maybe you can see why playing in the A standard when it's not a modal tune. This is why it's not that fun. I mean, at least you like it. I hate it. I hate that reach. It does a number on my hand, but I play in there anyway. But I digress.
I want to just keep you focused on time, just so you know what time it is.
Let's build C. So we've done the common key of G, D, and A, but let's build C, and we'll talk about some others because I need to leave you with your homework. Here's C. Find your C note. If going off of my cheats, that means if you're playing ring finger, you can now play 3-1 shape. If you're playing a 3-1 shape, that means you can now play a 1-2, but you need to remember that it is a C note and not a C sharp. So it's a 1-2 with the step being next to the index. And here's your exception for C. Because C is a 1-2 low, you cannot build a 1-2 low, meaning that it's not in the sharp position.
Oh, okay.
It's in the low position. You cannot build a 2-3 shape. So this is the exception for C. It gets an open E, or you can bar that, which is harder. I'm not expecting you to, but you can bar the 2 on the A and the 2 on the E. So here's what C sounds like. Find your C. Add the 3-1. Now add the 1-2. And now the 2-0. We won't do that. All right, I need to show you how to break these apart. So you're going to want to write some notes here, and luckily you'll have a video to work with this. So we did 3 shapes, right? We did the 2-3, we did the 3-1, and we did the 1-2. So in my notes, I have 2-3, and I call this breaking apart the shape. And what we are doing when we break apart the shape, we are going to use the open strings to work on our intonation. So here's how you do it. We're going to break apart the 2-3 shape down here on the G. So I'm going to start with the 0-3 to get it in tune. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the 2-3. If my 2 is in the right spot because I anchored the 3rd, that means that I can lift up the ring finger to reveal the open D, and it should sound good. And then to just make sure you can play the open to get all that in your ear. So that means what you have is 0-3, 2-3, 2 open, open. And that's how you start working on the intonation for a 2-3 shape. You do it down and low, you have the intonation for G. You do it in the middle register with that D. That is your work to get that 2-3 shape in tune for the key of D. And if you do it with the A 2-3 shape, it is now your intonation work for the key of A. As we'll start looking here, you're going to see your chord shapes pop up everywhere. We're going to even talk about what's so beautiful about that, because I tell you what, the fiddle is built to make you be successful. You just got to find the secret to it, and hopefully I will pass that on to you. All right, here we go. 3-1 shape. Here's what my notes say. I'm going to build and break apart the 3-1 shape. So I'm going to start with the open G and the index finger. And then what I'm going to do is when that sounds good, I'm going to hope that that index finger is actually what I need, and I'm going to find that C note. Actually, no, I said it wrong. I'm going to go 0-1, and then I'm going to have you go 0-3. And the reason why we're doing 0-3, I'm leaving the 1 down, and I'm going to put the index finger on top of the 1. And make sure that the ring finger is in tune. I think I said that just wrong. I stopped for just a second. And now that I've played the ring finger in its droning, if your instrument is made correctly, When you lift up the ring finger, your C note should be in the same place, but on the G string. So by having yourself go and get that open G, which is still part of a C chord, I'm going to lift back up to reveal the O1, and then I'm going to lay that C note down. So here's what it sounds like, the O1, O3, keep the index down, don't move anything, back to the O1, you've anchored, and now the 3-1. If the 3-1 doesn't sound good, remember that the adjustment needs to be made with the third, like the ring finger, not the index. So if the index is always sounding good, just remember which one you're using as an anchor. Okay, I'm worried I'm running out of time. D shape, this 1-2 shape, which is a D right now. And what I forgot to tell you is that the 3-1 shape that we've been practicing down here is the C chord. 2-3 shape is the G chord. This 1-2 high shape is now the D chord, and here's how you get it in tune. 1-2 shape, and this is the 1-2 high. What you're gonna do is use the 1 open, get it in tune. Once you have it in tune, you can lay the 2 down in that high position, and then you're gonna just bounce back and forth with that, because it's harder. Back to the 2-3. So since I'm running short on time, I'm going to do the last 2 skills for you here. I just want you to, on your notes, and then I'm going to demonstrate it for you. This is a different section, but what we're going to do is a simple G scale. And we are going to add a string complement to it, and I'm going to tell you what those are, and then you're going to practice that this next week. So what I would write down on my notes is that you have a G string and a D string, and we're going to build a scale. So that means you're going to start with an open, open. And then you're going to play your index finger, but you're going to use the open D with it. And then you're going to play the second finger and use an open D. And then you're going to find that C note and play a 3-1. And then you get a freebie of open, open again. And now you need to get over on the D string, and we're playing the index finger, so you're gonna play an open G with a 1. And now is that nasty 1-2 shape. And now the 2-3 shape. You quit, you're going to check the third before you come back down, but just to make sure you're in tune. So here's what that skill sounds like. Is that we used all of the combinations that you just learned when you broke apart those shapes. We used every one of them to practice getting that intonation. And when we did that, we used every variation on the G and D strings for a G chord, C chord, and D chord. When you play open, open, you might want to write this down. So I would say open, open. That is your easy G chord. When you play a 1 open, that is the easier D chord. When you play a 2 open, another variation of a G chord. When you play the 3-1, it is a closed C. Open, open is the freebie G again. Open 1 is the C variation. 1-2 is the closed D, and 2-3 is the closed G. And when you check it, you're just making sure that you definitely had that 2-3 shape in tune. And we are going to use these skills, whether it be breaking apart the shapes or doing this double note, what I call this one the double note G scale, to start working on bow rhythms. So before we end here, I'm going to show you why this becomes fun. The whole idea behind my fiddling is I simplify the left hand. I make it go into autopilot so that I can really work on what I think is the most important thing about fiddling, and that is bowing. I don't really care what the notes are. I can have a skeleton of the tune, but if I cannot rhythmically bow that tune the way that tune sounds, it doesn't matter what notes I play with it. So technically, I can just use the open strings and work on different bowings, and I am getting further with my bow hand than doing anything else that you can do. So we're going to be working on intonation. We're going to get to the fingers to be buddies together so they know how to move across the fingerboard, and then we are going to add bow rhythms. So for example, here's what you know already. We're going to work through, I'll just do a combination of G, C, and D. You got the double note G scale to work on, but let me just show you how to break apart your shapes now, and I'll show you how to put a rhythm in. So let's just I'm going to do a down, up, and then I'm going to do a down pulse, up pulse. And I think we're going to have to talk about pulsing next lesson, but I'm just going to demonstrate what you can work on. So here's the 2-3, the 3-1, the 1-2, back to the 2-3, breaking apart the shapes in a kind of song-like fashion, and then I'm going to just add one bow rhythm so that you can see what to do. Here we go, my G. Double note G scale. We're going to start layering it with different things like the traditional in lick, or it might be the double lick that I call, but we then start working on bow rhythms to insert with our left hand, because the more that you think about your fiddle being in registers, and the more that you lay those chord sheets down where the tune falls, the quicker you will be able to navigate and learn a tune without even trying. So if you kind of focus a little bit on seconding, you accidentally learn tunes just because they're right there in the shape. And so, any questions? I definitely taking us past our time, but it was important to get through all of it. So this is the time to unmute.
Any source recordings or specific fiddlers we should be listening to?
You know, in the last session, we kind of used Flatwoods, Clyde Davenport's Flatwoods to kind of show how a tune falls into a chord shape. You can go back and listen to that. It'll be in your notes. I'll put a link to Larry Warren's Slippery Hill, because I'll do probably an example of playing the tune without playing the notes so that you can start here how to insert bow rhythms into something. So.
How about specifically geared towards seconding? Are there Cajun duets or?
I mean, I've spent years doing stuff with Howard, and any of our recordings that you will start hearing everything I taught you today. There's nothing that I told you today that I don't use 95% of the time when I'm seconding someone.
If you want to hear some seconding that's kind of from our area, there's some of the Bob Walters stuff that has it. Now, they second a little differently than Trisha does, because everybody kind of does that differently. But
your seconding is beautiful. It's exquisite.
Thank you.
I love your seconding.
Thank you.
But, Bob Walters does that. You certainly can hear that in obviously a lot of Cajun fiddling, but it might kind of be a little bit different. But I think that one thing that Trisha will begin to reiterate is that it's almost like through this path of understanding chords and their shapes and how the chords lay under the tune that really you learn the tune better. So whether you approach this from this is an avenue to learn seconding, or for learning tunes quicker and more effectively, you can approach it a couple of different ways. So like, for example, flatwoods, you're not listening for seconding, obviously. You're listening for how
Like the
those
rhythm
shapes
of the
apply to
how the shapes apply to a tune, as well as what the actual rhythm is of the tune. Because with seconding, you end up mimicking whatever you hear that rhythm being, with just kind of like what I showed you today with the chord structure behind it. You start looking at yourself as the accompaniment, the guitar player, and doing what they do. That little bow pulse that we did today, that's the one bowing that out of everything, if you're still new with bowing and fiddling, get it to where that bow pulse becomes kind of second nature. Because the beauty about that bow lick is that it kind of acts as a guitar anyway. The purpose of a guitar is the boom, chuck, boom, chuck, boom, chuck. And when you do bow, pulse, you got that same feel. You're emphasizing the boom and the chuck. And so you can lay underneath things. So get it to where pulsing is just second nature. And it wasn't for me, by the way. I did in-pulsing because of my region, but I could not pulse in the middle of the tune to save my life. I had to learn that within maybe the last 15 years. And so, those things, depending on where you come from, will either be a piece of cake or not. But the more that you play and you see someone else doing it, the easier it is to start thinking of your tunes as far as the beat and the offbeat, because that's what you're working on here with fiddle tunes.
When you say impulsing, what I'm not familiar with that term.
But impulse.
You're going way.
Yeah, we're going way beyond. We're going into the next lesson, because the next lesson will kind of be, we will go back and make sure that everybody is working their fingers, meaning part of what you should also be working is going through your shapes, which I haven't done that yet in this lesson. But for example, I would do the 2-3. This was something that we were supposed to get to the 3-1, to the 1-2, back to the 3-1. So that's all G work, right? 2-3, 3-1, 1-2, 3-1. And now the C chord. And now the D chord. And back to G. And you all have this information. The next lesson we will start working across the fingerboard using those shapes. But for this lesson, your job is just to start getting them in tune. How many of you got them in like perfect tune? Because that's what you need. Yeah, they need to be, if your fingers are not intonating those chord shapes yet, that just kind of means that when you play a tune, you're probably not intonating the tune. So if you want to get better.
Could I ask you to?
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Could I ask you to quickly in the D key? In G we did a G, a C, and a D. In G.
Oh yeah, for the chord progression.
1, 4, and 5 was it? And a D. What are the three chords in a 1, 4, and 5 in the key of D?
D, G, and A.
D,
G,
and in A,
D, and E. And that's one other thing. If you couldn't answer those as quickly as I can right now, start memorizing them. C is C, F, and G.
Well, that's what I'm working on.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad that you asked. Those of you that
C, F, and what? G?
G. So those of you that couldn't answer right away, start putting your cheat sheet together. You need to know those.
Yeah.
You really do.
Yeah.
Anything else? How you feel? I don't know if it's what you thought it was going to be. Like I said, I will be making lesson notes. I will upload the video. I even timestamp the video with where kind of the bullet points are with things so that you can go back and find what you couldn't get. And then we will start on this next week again. And we will go over what we did this week, the learning part, and we will start putting the pieces together, hopefully. And then we'll see where we go from there. But, I think we spent more on tuning with you all than what I've done in the other sections, and so
I need to hear that. So,
you guys, I can't thank you enough. This is partly how we're still able to eat. So you're helping feed our family during these last 2 years where I feel like we've used all of our resources. So, anything that you can do to send me feedback, it helps me be able to teach the next class a little bit better. So just email
thank you
us.
so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. And
We'll see you next week. Everybody have a great week. Bye. I'm
Chris?
signing off.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.